Good evening to the folks at home and welcome to See You at USC on Friday night. My name is Dan Toomey and joining me today is Mr. Randy Sinnott. He is the president of the Academy of Magical Art centered at the Magic Castle here in Los Angeles. It's not going to be an interview you're going to want to miss. I hope to see you there. And welcome once again to See You at USC on Friday night. My name is Dan Toomey, and joining me tonight is President of the Academy of Magical Art, centered here in Los Angeles, Mr. Randy Sinnott. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Mr. Sinnott.
My pleasure.
Thank you for having us. I know usually Friday night is a conflicting time for many, but once again, you made the effort to come into the studio. So now just a brief introduction for those who might not be familiar with what exactly you do. You are a USC Gould School graduate, just a bit of a plug there. Right. President of the Academy of Magical Art. You're a veteran, almost kind of self-taught magician here and there, and that's quite a path. I guess, where did that all start, would you say?
Well, it started in middle school. I was 13 years old. I was supposed to be doing trigonometry in my middle school library. I got bored, which happened very frequently in those days.
Easy with trigonometry.
And I just randomly, there were bookshelves on the left and right. I randomly pulled a book off the shelf, and as luck would have it, it was the biography of Harry Houdini by an author named Walter Gibson, who at that time was the leading author of great books about magic. And I went right to the pictures in the middle and saw, I had no idea who Harry Houdini was, saw a gentleman in handcuffs and getting thrown from a trunk off a bridge into a river of freezing water. And it just captured my imagination as to why somebody would do those things and what it was, how did he learn how to escape and do the things that he did. So I didn't put the book down, and that started my interest.
That's it. And it's funny how you can cite it to that exact moment. I mean, did you know right there that, okay, this is something I want to pursue, or was it like, is that where it started to develop?
Yeah, by the time I was finished reading the book, I knew that I wanted to learn more about magic.
Sure.
And especially about Harry Houdini and his escapes and things like that. And I was living at the time in a small town in Missouri, and so I'd go to the county library, and they had a little section, and there were maybe 6 or 8 or 10 books about magic, and so I'd get those. And a couple of them just turned out to be very landmark books, one by Harry Blackstone, who was a very famous magician, both senior and junior. And so from there, it just became, first I was interested in the magicians themselves and their stories and sort of how they created things. I admired their creativity and then their work effort. And then later it became, this is something I want to do myself. Not even that much later, but just a short while later. Yeah.
And did you perform a lot of magic? Like, did you do any shows or?
I did for the kids in my neighborhood.
Sure.
And again, I didn't have a network of other magicians that I knew, so I would teach myself things or create things and then do a 15-minute show, a 30-minute show, something like that. But it's always the intellectual pursuit that I liked at least as much as performing itself.
And so now, I guess fast forward a bit, and
Sure.
you're no longer board in trigonometry class, but you're the president of the Academy of Magical Art. So, I mean, for those who might not know what the Academy is, what's I guess the purpose of the Academy or their mission?
The Academy of Magical Arts is a private club for magicians, centered on magicians. It's got now about 5,200 members, and there are actually non-magician members and magician members. It was started by two brothers, and their history is kind of an interesting story, and it kind of the path from where they started to where we are now is just incredible. So there was a lawyer here in town, Bill Larson Sr., who, in addition to practicing law, was really interested in magic. He had two sons. He passed away at a young age, relatively. His two sons kept the dream, and one of the father's dreams had been to start a club for magicians. And so these two brothers did. They were both in the entertainment industry. One was at CBS and one was with a writer for some TV shows. And they looked up and they found this abandoned old Victorian-style house in Hollywood right near the intersection of Highland and Hollywood, and tracked down the owner of the building, a man named Tom Glover, and made a handshake deal and said, we'd like to lease the building and pay you just a percentage of the rent. Our rent will be a percentage of the food and beverage income, so that we can have a little club for magicians. And so it started off with a few hundred magicians.
So from right on then, this is a club solely for magicians.
Solely for magicians, that's right. And the building is what became known as the Magic Castle. At the time, it was a rundown house, and one of the brothers was very astute at carpentry and knew people that could find great fixtures, old bars, things to put on the walls and everything like that to decorate it to the place that it is now.
Yeah. And so now the Academy it's a global network.
Correct.
And there's certain tiers to, not necessarily tiers, but different forms of membership you can achieve. What are those, like how can somebody get involved?
There's only two ways to get into the place. Three. If you're a member, you can go into the Magic Castle. It's open 7 nights a week, and Saturdays and Sundays for brunches. You can go with a magician, with a member, or with a guest pass from a member. Then to become a member, there's 2 types of membership. Associate is a non-magician member, and that's somebody who's really passionate about the art of magic and wants to support the art of magic.
Okay.
And so there's no real audition or entry process for that other than filing an application. We are fortunate enough to have a 1-year wait now for associate members.
Okay.
So
wow.
we've got people stacked up waiting to come in as members.
Jeez.
And then to be a magician member, you have to do an audition before the membership committee.
Really?
There's an audition committee, and typically about 8 or 10 of them will be downstairs in one of the areas, and you've got a close-up room, a close-up table and mat, and the floor is yours for 10 minutes to try to impress them with your skills.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm wondering what are auditioners looking for out of a magician? Because I know there's the conventional tricks that everybody knows. Are they looking for something new, or are they looking for expertise, would you say?
They're looking for 2 things. I think one is a real passion for magic, and the other is that the person has sincerely worked hard to put together an act. They don't look for perfection, but they look for a lot of rehearsal, a lot of skill. Creativity is great, but you can also do, there are millions and millions of tricks that people have performed over the years that you can, select from them and put in a routine. And it's the thoughtfulness of not just doing trick number 1 and trick number 2, but presenting a character, presenting a show, something that flows from one to another like that.
And so now, I mean, the Academy, I suppose, is seen as the epicenter, especially with Magic Castle. It's seen as the epicenter of magic in the world. And have you seen during your time, because you were formerly treasurer and now you're the president, have you seen it change in its position, I guess, in the world of magic since then?
It's always been in the central, since its starting, it was very much an epicenter, although the world was much more isolated back then before, international TV, before the internet and everything else. But people did come from all over the world, and the Larson brothers who started it were very good at networking in the magic world, and people came from all over America and even from other countries to live in Los Angeles and in Hollywood to become members of the Academy. And now we have members in over 40 or 50 countries from the world. Performers come from all over the world. We have special weeks where all the magicians are from Spain or from Italy or from China, or all women or all veterans. And so everybody who's anybody in the world of magic is a member of the Academy of Magical Arts.
That's funny. And so you've seen it almost expand globally, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. It was worldwide when I started, but it's a lot more so now. We've done a lot more. We have apartments close by where performers from out of town can stay, just to make it a lot more comfortable and amenable to get top stars from around the world to come and perform for our audiences.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think there's been such a global expansion, I suppose, in the past few years?
Magic, I think, has taken a new role. There's a lot more magic on TV. It's a lot more popular.
Really?
I think everybody loves live magic the best, and it's the place to go to where performers come for a week at a time. They can do 21 shows in a week for all different audiences. A lot of their friends will be in the audience because the magic community is very small, and so they like to perform and see 6 or 8 or 10 of their friends out in the audience, in addition to people who are watching magic live maybe for the first time. It's a place where they can network and hang out and talk to each other about what they're working on and what things work well in their shows. It's just a great, it's almost like a university for magic in a sense.
Yeah, and that's interesting because you talked about almost the state of magic in society today. And do you feel that is very different from when you first became involved as that kid in trigonometry class to how it is today? Do you feel like it's easier for kids or harder for kids to get interested in it?
I think it's easier because just there's a lot more awareness. Like when I grew up in a small town, I had no way to find out where another magician was, who he or she might be, how I could learn from them. Now, of course, there's a lot on the internet and a lot of people are advertising and things like that. Just the creativity, it's just like music and art. I mean, people are creating new things every day, and just a lot of opportunities.
Are there any specific, instances of creativity or innovation in the field of magic that are particularly striking to you?
Maybe not incidents, but I'll tell you about one person in the history of magic, a gentleman named Di Vernon, who lived in he passed away in the 90s, in his 90s. And so for most of the last century, he was very active in magic. He grew up in New York. He was originally from Canada. And he was, by all accounts, all magicians will tell you that, especially for close-up magic, the most innovative and creative genius in the world of magic. And to show you how the Magic Castle became the epicenter of magic, the Larson brothers, when they opened the Magic Castle, knew about Di Vernon, wrote to him and said, would you move out to Hollywood so that you can become a member of our club and hang out here? You'll be surrounded by magicians. You can teach people. You can innovate. All these things he did, and in fact, for a brief period of time, he lived in the house that's the Magic Castle, because at the time a couple of the upstairs rooms that had been bedrooms when it was a residence, they were still bedrooms.
It was like a boarding place for the world's most talented
wayward magicians, yeah. And so, but he was there every night, and he was a cigar smoker and had a cigar in his mouth and cards or coins or whatever he was working with in his hands, and he literally mentored at least a full generation of magicians.
Full generation.
And there are people today who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s who were students of, they called him the professor. The things that he innovated are performed around the world every day. And he just was a unique genius when it came to magic.
That's so that I don't know, that for me that kind of creates that image of like the Parisian salon kind of this. Does that still happen at the Magic Castle today? Like that exchange of lessons? And
it happens every day.
Really?
Magicians go there for that reason, and performers will hang out with their friends in between their shows. And then Wednesday night in particular is a night when a lot of magician members like to go, and you'll see them at each of the bars. There's 5 bars in the Magic Castle. Not that I should say that on the college show, but
and we have a good percentage of overflow. We're fine.
But just hanging out and teaching you other things, or this is what I learned since last week. This is something I'm working on, and a lot of brainstorming. I've learned a lot from my friends there.
You learn a lot from these guys.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
so funny.
Yeah.
And this happens every Wednesday.
Well, every night.
Sure.
And Wednesday is kind of unofficially our members' night when there's a lot of members doing that.
That's so. It really sounds like Magic Castle is this place that it's kind of the epicenter of magic, especially in Los Angeles, where it's such an entertainment-based community. Would you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's no other place like it in the world. There's a club in London called the Magic Circle, which is not open every night, open 1 or 2 nights a month. But in terms of live performances and live shows, it's got a restaurant, 5 bars. It's the only place like it in the world.
Really, and I think. Do you think the position of, actually, we're going to cut to a commercial break really quick if you wouldn't mind, but
Sure.
I would love to talk more about how this age of technology is influencing magic in the modern age, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Thank you once again for sticking with us. We will be right back for a quick commercial break. This is CEO at USC on Friday night. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back. Thank you for sticking with us here at CU at USC on Friday night. My name is Dan Toomey, and once again, Mr. Randy Sinnott has joined us tonight. He's the president of the Academy of Magical Art across the world, but centered in Los Angeles at the Magic Castle. Now, Mr. Sinnott, earlier we were talking about the Magic Castle and the mythology behind it and how it's really a place where magicians come and learn from one another. But I think I would really like to talk about the state of magic today, especially in a world that is so heavily focused on technology, so heavily focused on internet and really manipulation with such. And I was wondering if what's your stance on that in terms of magic? Has it manipulated magic in a certain way, or?
Well, technology's had a few influences.
Sure.
The first is there's a lot more magic on TV, on the internet, and things like that. Certainly when I was growing up, Mark Wilson, who is still a member of the Magic Castle, but he was the first person to have a weekly TV show. And people enjoy to watch magic on TV, but there's always a question about, is it a camera trick? Is it an angle? Is there something suspicious about it? Whereas, live, you can't fake it. And so I think one of the great things is that people who are doing magic on TV or in front of a camera will do everything they can do to accurately show that it's real sleight of hand, it's real manipulation, and it's not a camera trick. I mean, they'll use live audiences and things like that. But it does also give magic a lot more exposure, and people know what magic is, they know what it's about. Until I read that book, I was 13, and I'd watched Mark's show, but I didn't know that much about it.
Yeah.
And it also shows people how many different kinds of magic there are. I mean, there's close-up magic with cards and coins, there's stage magic and illusions, there's parlor magic, and one of the great things about the Magic Castle is we have different showrooms to showcase
you have a different
all
room
those
for
different
every
styles.
single one.
There's a close-up room that seats about 30 people, and the performer is as close to the front row as you and I are.
Really?
There's a parlor that seats about 55 people, where, again, the front row is very close. And then there's a Palace of Mystery that seats about 140 people that has a stage, 3 different acts, and people can do much bigger illusions. And then there are other venues. There's a couple of bars where magicians behind the bar do magic. But, again, the internet and electronics do help people appreciate the depth and the breadth of what the magical arts are.
And it's a very mysterious environment surrounding the Magic Castle. I mean, there's no photography allowed inside. There's a very strict dress code, which luckily I would meet right now with my jacket and my tie. And what is the reasoning behind that? I guess is because it's very particular.
Yeah. Well, it started off, of course, in a different era. It started in 1963.
Sure.
The house itself is over 100 years old. January 2nd, 1963 is when it became the Magic Castle, and it was more common then for people to dress up, coat and tie, dress or skirt. But that has carried through, and there has never been any push to change it, either change the dress code, for example, from either members or guests. And I think that people who live in Los Angeles and don't normally dress up, it really helps make it a special evening if somebody pulls off a coat and tie out of their closet and puts it on, and the
it's refreshing.
Wife or girlfriend gets to go buy a new dress to go out to the Magic Castle, and it really helps make it a special event. And you put it into the very classic architecture and decor of the club, which again is very old school, a lot of dark wood, a lot of dim light and things like that. Gives it a very elegant experience for people.
And it seems like in that aspect, there's a big respect for tradition with the Magic Castle, like magic in itself. A great magician never tells how to do the trick. And do you think? I guess what do you think the position is with magic and tradition, but also having to face we have to be innovative as we progress? Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think certainly there are classics of magic that people like to see. I mean, the Chinese linking rings, for example, or cups and balls. And every performer, the art of being a performer is, and there are so many great performers who come, is everybody does them differently, presents them differently, different character, different discussion about what they're doing and what the nature of the act is. But people are, as I alluded to before with art and music, people are innovating every day, and that's what keeps it fresh. And coming to the Magic Castle as frequently as a lot of members do, the acts change every week. Many members try to come every week to see different people, but you're seeing different people doing different acts. And the person who used to do this set 5 years ago every year they change it, and so you're seeing something new and
so
fresh
they're
all the
constantly
time.
changing their act.
Absolutely.
That must be so
yeah.
difficult for,
Yeah.
for a magician.
Well, it is, and that's why the greats are really great, because they are at a level that most of us, myself included, don't achieve. But just like great musicians,
It's all practice and repetition.
Exactly.
And in that regard, you yourself are self-taught. You never
Self-taught, and at the Magic Castle they have classes that people can
okay.
attend, and so I went through when I was first became a member. A number of different courses taught by some great magicians to learn new skills, and then through friends there and things like that. They also have lectures every Sunday.
Interesting.
For magician members.
So it's really it's almost like an academy in that.
It is. Yeah.
So did you go through the audition process yourself?
I did. Yes.
How was that? Was that?
It was good. I felt like I was pretty prepared for it, and I in the way I tend to do things, I over-prepared a little bit. But
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I wanted to do a card trick, a coin trick, a few other things like that. But that really forced me to put together a complete act with a complete theme and everything like that. And much more when I was younger, I'd been a lot more casual. I mean, if I'm performing for my friends, it was a lot more casual. But this was something that I really took seriously, and that people do before they audition.
So when was that moment where you finally said, this is something I want to take seriously, and I want to be a member of this institution?
The first time I went, until I moved to California, I had no idea that there was a Magic Castle.
Really?
Again, this is before the internet and everything else. And I ate a few times up at Yamashiro restaurant, which is at the top of the hill. And driving down, I'd say, "Oh, that's the Magic Castle." But I thought you had to be a professional magician, David Copperfield, or somebody like that, to be a member. So I went as a guest one time and saw a very small part of it, but I just fell in love with it. And I said, I want to become a member. I want to audition to be a magician member, and then be able to come here all the time.
And so I'd love to hear more about your progression through the ranks, I guess, because you started off as a member, and then where did it go from there?
Well, there's 5,200 members, and so most members are members, and a lot of them are non-resident. Some are non-resident, so they'll come once in a while, and some will come more frequently. Like a lot of other clubs, it has committees that different people can serve on. There's several different committees that do things. And then there's the board of directors, and then we have a board of trustees also. And so, for a lot of people, they're just very happy and thrilled to be members. And then some people want to serve a little bit more, so they get on committees and then get on to one of the boards eventually. But the boards are elected positions. Once every 2 years, we have elections.
Okay.
And so there are 7 directors and 7 trustees.
Oh, wow.
The directors,
all hands on deck there.
Yeah. So the directors run the business side of it, and then the trustees run the magic policies and things like that.
And something I'm curious about, how many magicians do you receive that are self-taught nowadays? Is it different now? Did you see more self-taught back in the day, or has it changed? Yeah,
that's a good question. And everybody seems to be much more talented than I was when I auditioned, and so I assume, I think it's a lot, especially in Los Angeles, it's a lot easier for people to know other magicians and to one-on-one with other magicians. It's a very small community.
Really?
It's incredibly small. And it just amazed me, and it's also very close and very tight. One of the things that's great about the magic community is that we have a Di Vernon Foundation named after Di Vernon, the magician I was telling you about, that raises money to help support magicians who are in need. So if somebody has an accident and can't work, or something else, that there's money that they can give to people like that. But when a legendary magician passes away, the whole magic community knows about it like that. Yeah, it's a very small community.
And why do you think that is? That it's so tightly knit and small?
Partly, I think it's the nature of magic, which is a very sort of closed community. I mean, the code of conduct says you can't, speak to outsiders about your tricks, and so just by being part of that circle, you feel like you're part of a very exclusive group. And then it's also performing art, and so unlike you know, other professions where an engineer goes to their office and they do their job, a performer performs in front of 100 people or 200 people, and so you just get to know who the real stars are.
Yeah.
In the
It seems like the same people who are working up front are the same people working behind the scenes and teaching each other.
Exactly.
And do you think that the Magic Castle plays a big role in that? I mean, it's like we said earlier, it's really the center of it all. Is that the mission of the Magic Castle, I guess?
Well, one of the missions certainly is to promote the art of magic.
Sure.
And I think the way that it's done it for the past 54 years has really promoted the art of magic and just put it at the center of the map in terms of the world of magic.
Yeah, and it seems that you guys, it's stayed relevant. What do you attribute to that?
I think just really it's the energy of the members, because there's no one edict that the board of directors or anything can issue. There's no governing body in the world, but it's really it's the enthusiasm of the members. People who go there as members want to perform for their friends. People who want to perform magic want to come to the Magic Castle, and so it's just a self-generating energy from the members.
And it doesn't seem like that energy is going to be falling short anytime soon. We're out of time, but once again, Mr. Sinnott, thank you so much. Thank you for your service, and thank you for joining us tonight. This has been See You at USC on Friday night. For Mr. Randy Sinnott, for myself, Dan Toomey, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on Monday. Have a good one.